Hi, my name is Søren Pommer. I'm the founder of Glue, and today we're going to talk about work instructions. I want to start off with an anecdote, because we have to go back to 1940 in the US, where everybody, all the soldiers were going to the front lines, and the factories had no workers left, and the US War Commission had a very big task ahead of them. How were they able to keep war production up while having all the workers at the front? And the answer to this big issue, this big question, was to introduce what they called training within industry. Training within industry is a format of training and work instructions that allowed the US to quickly get other people involved in the workforce and quickly get production back up. So at the end of the war, there was actually 1.6 million people that were trained like this. And the experience was so overwhelmingly positive that it formed the basis of of rebuilding, for instance, Japan, and it formed the basis of lean, as everybody knows today. So this method of creating work instructions is really a foundation behind a lot of what we see today and our industrialization today. So with this in mind, it's a bit of a paradox, you can say, that work instructions are no longer talked about or no longer used in a lot of companies because they can provide tremendous value, especially in these times of extreme complexity, extreme changes in terms of systems, in a situation where you actually take a lot of your work and you move it from physical shop floor work into computers. That's the time when it becomes very difficult for workers to know what to do. And this is where work instructions are as important as ever, I would say.
Okay, that's interesting, but can you just back up a little bit? I mean, what are in work instructions and how do they differ from, say, like a process?
Yeah, that's an important point. Work instructions are not processes or procedures. So you can say, first you need an understanding of your process. That's essentially talking about what is to be done, by whom. But then the next step is to go into the detail of what does the individual role, the individual person need to do. And that's where the work instruction comes in, by explaining how work is done. So the work instruction is the detailed sequence of what you should do and how you do it, and which tools you need. So it really is the job aid that lets you perform the job with this next to you.
Most of the time people are trained on the job. They might have someone who's leaving who trains them for a week or 2 weeks before they leave. What's the value of writing something down? Like, I don't really see. Can you explain to me what the point is there?
The value is consistency. By having the knowledge from everybody formulated into a work instruction or a checklist, then you will be able to make it much easier to perform the specific task without any errors, without forgetting little checks. Whereas if you pass on these things verbally from employee to employee, often a lot of important checks and little tasks are forgotten. These may be tasks that only are relevant once in a while, but they can be very critical to risk and to safety. One example could be if you have a restaurant and you need to measure the temperature in your refrigerator every day. You will never find any problem with that until you have a problem with food being too old and guests falling sick. So unless you check your temperature every day, you're not going to see the problem. But checking that temperature is super important.
So I guess the old saying, to err as human, comes in. We're talking about human error, and that can have a lot of cost.
Yes, absolutely. The work instructions will help you eliminate a lot of human error. Error that are not caused by ignorance, but errors that are caused by sloppiness, so to speak. Errors that we all make every day because we don't really pay attention to how a certain job is done. This is where work instructions can really provide us with some kind of a starting point for making sure we remember everything.
So what goes into making or to writing good work instructions?
Well, first of all, they have to be accessible. By being accessible, they have to be in a format that can be right in the work situation. So for instance, if you're in a factory, it may be you have something printed and laminated and put on your machine, or you have even better, you have a tablet where you can see it visually. So it has to be in the working situation, it has to be easily available and timely. Then secondly, it has to be very clear. So you have to keep it very short, and you have to think about your audience. If you can say creating work instructions for people that are not used to reading, then they have to be very visual and very brief, ideally video. You also have to make sure that they are credible, so they have to contain the knowledge of the people that are the credible ones in the workplace. So it may be some of the older, more experienced people. It may be experts of different kinds. And the last thing is they need to be consistent, so that you use the same language, same words across the work instruction, across the different ones, and they have the same format. If each work instruction is created differently, people will have a hard time just decoding what to do. So you have to have a very clear template, a very clear way of doing it, and keep it consistent.
So who should actually write the work instructions?
Well, in our thinking, it should ideally be the people that do the work. They should write them, and they should be responsible for them. And one good way of doing it, for instance, is that one person writes the instruction and the other person tries to follow it. And these two employees have an interaction going until the other person can do it flawlessly. So it may be you have the slightly more experienced employee writing it, and the young, new employee executing it. That may be a good balance.
So what's the advantages of having them? Because obviously there's a lot of tasks in every given company, in a company, so it's quite a big time investment writing them down.
Yes. Well, you can say there are different types of advantages. First of all, we talked about the risk. You lower risk of errors that can be very costly, both from a safety point of view, but also from a cost point of view. You can make big mistakes if you set up a machine the wrong way and you produce a number of thousands of items that you have to discard afterwards, for instance. Or if you treat a new customer the wrong way, so he gets annoyed. These things can have huge cost. That's one part, the risk, and the other part is the efficiency. That by writing your work instructions clear, concisely, and so that they really reflect the best way of doing the job, then you can save a lot of time. To give you an example, we are writing work instructions on how to produce these videos, how to create blog posts and so on. And by saying exactly what to do in our systems in the right sequence, we save a lot of time basically from post to post, and we can always add our latest innovations, our latest ideas into the work instruction. So they become a way of codifying our knowledge and making it shareable and making it less dependent on specific people. So we hope you found this interesting. If you want to know more about work instructions and how to write them, we are preparing a guide to writing work instructions where we try to distill all these points into a very concrete, actionable guide. So thanks for watching. If you're interested in writing your own work instructions, then click the links below. We have made some guides, and see you next time.